Example 2. This is a second question which is quite different from the first question. And the difference between the first question and second question is here you have a negative. Like done in the first question, the first thing you're supposed to do is to create an assumed square root for 28 minus 16 root 3. Let us in this case assume the square root of 28 minus 16 root 3 is square root of x minus square root of y. Now, it's different from the first one. You have a negative here, so the assumed square root would have to have a negative since this is negative, not positive. Unlike the first one that had a positive here and therefore had a positive in our assumed square root. We're assuming the square root of 28 minus 16 root 3 is square root of x or root x minus root y. That's the first step. We now have to equate them. We have 28 minus 16 root 3 equals root x minus root y, or square root of x minus square root of y. For them to equate to one another, you have to square your assumed roots. I said in the previous example, the square root of 4 is 2, and for us to equate 4 to 2 or 2 to 4, you power the 2 with a 2. That's, you square the 2. Square of 2 gives you 4. Same applies to this. We've assumed the square root of 18 minus 16 root 3 to be square root of x minus square root of y. We square it. Then we open the bracket. Now, we have a negative here, and we use this. A minus b all square is a square plus b square minus 2ab. In some textbook, you can find it as a square minus 2ab plus b square. Still the same thing. I prefer to have a square plus b square minus 2ab. We apply the shortcut to expanding root x minus root y square. On the left, we have 28 minus 16 root 3 equals, we expand this using the shortcut, that's this derived formula. Our a is root x, so we have root x square plus our b is root y, so we have root y square minus 2, you have 2ab. A is root x, so times root x times root y, which is our b. We've expanded this. On the next line, we still have on the left 28 minus 16 root 3 equals, here the square cancels the square root, you'll be left with x, this x, plus square cancels square root, you'll be left with y. Then you have minus 2, you have root x times root y, that's 2 root x times y. So you have 28 minus 16 root 3 equals x plus y minus 2 square root x y. Now that you have this, we can now equate. 28 is the same thing as x plus y, but we have minus 16 root 3 is to be equated to minus 2 root xy. This is to create our equations. We create our equation 1 and equation 2. So we have 28 equals x plus y, that's equation 1. 28 equals x plus y, then minus 16 root 3, let's just do it with the negative sign so you can best understand it, equals minus 2 root xy, or x times y. Take all of this and equate it to minus 16 root 3. This is equation 2. But we're not done bringing down equation 2 to the lowest term. We say this negative cancels this negative. Then these are outside. You can say divide both sides by 2. Divide this by 2 and divide this by 2. Then 2 will cancel 2. 2 into 1, 2 in 16, that's 8. We have 8 root 3 equals root xy. We're still working on equation 2. We're not done with equation 2. Now, this is quite different from the first one, because the first question had 2 times the root of the value on both sides. But here, you had 16 root 3 and 2 root xy, so you can't just equate them. You have to make sure they are the same. Remember, we did basic and single SURDS form. We now have to take this from its basic form to the single SURDS form, so it looks like this. This 8, we have to get its value under square root. 8 is linked to root 3 by times, and you still have root xy on the other side, on the right. 8 is the same thing as square root of 64. Square root of 64 will give you 8 times square root of 3 equals root xy. Still have root xy. Now you can have it as a big square root or root 64 times 3. We are grouping them from the basic form back to the single form, equals root xy. Square root of 64 times 3 is 192, equals square root of xy. Now to get done with equation 2, both of them are in single SURDS form. We can therefore say 192 equals xy or x times y, or we can say square root cancels square root. It's allowed. 192 is equivalent or equals xy. This is our true equation 2. Remember, our equation 1 is 28 equals x plus y. That's equation 1. And our equation 2 is 192 equals xy. That's x times y. So here we have a simultaneous equation. And like the first question, it's going to turn into a quadratic equation while using substitution method. Here, we take equation 1 and make x subject of formula. So we have 28 equals x plus y. That's equation 1. We're trying to make x subject of formula. We take this plus y over the equals to sign to join the 28. So you have 28 plus y crosses the equals to sign and turns to minus y equals x. That is from equation 1 we derive equation 3, which we can rewrite as x equals 28 minus y. You have to be careful here. The 28 owns the positive and the y owns the negative. So you have x equals 28 minus y. We created equation 3 from equation 1. We can only substitute it into equation 2. So we know the value for our x is 28 minus y. So going back to equation 2, we replace x with 28 minus y. Let's rewrite equation 2. 192 equals x times y or xy, equation 2. In equation 3, x is 28 minus y. So we have 192 equals, the value of x now is 28 minus y in brackets. Then you still have the y outside multiplying it. Our simultaneous equation is turning into a quadratic equation. We have 192 equals, we multiply y by 28 and y times minus y, because the y outside affects both of them. So you have 28y minus y squared. Y times 28 is 28y. Y times minus y is minus y squared. We don't want our y squared negative. We take the minus y squared over the equals to sign. It turns to y squared or plus y squared. We take this plus 28y over the equals to sign. It turns to minus 28y. Then we still have our plus 192, because the 192 has a positive in front of it, equals 0. We've created a quadratic equation, and here the coefficient of y squared is 1 or plus 1. That will ease our stress, and our focus will be on 192. Two numbers that you multiply to get 192, but when you add them, it gives the coefficient of y, which is minus 28. To save our time, two numbers that will multiply themselves to give plus 192, the two numbers have to be negative for you to get a negative 28 when you add them together. And the values are minus 12 and minus 16. When you multiply minus 12 times minus 16, you get plus 192. Minus times minus is plus. 12 times 16 is 192. And when you add them together, minus 12 plus minus 16, minus 12 plus times minus is minus. You resolve this positive and this negative to 1, which is negative. Then you have your 16. You have minus 12 minus 16 will give you minus 28. So two numbers that will give you plus 192 when you multiply them together is minus 12 times minus 16. And when you add them, you get minus 28, which is the coefficient of y in this case. This is like a puzzle in quadratic equation. So we have it as y squared. We've broken down minus 28y into minus 12y and minus 16y. So we have it as minus 12y minus 16y. That's the essence of finding two numbers that you multiply to give you 192. When we add them, it gives us minus 28. That's the puzzle. You've broken down this into 2, then you add your plus 192 to it equals 0. You group them in 2s, this, then minus 16y. The 16y owns the minus, so you group it with the minus. Then you have this. What's common in y squared and minus 12y? You have y. You'll be left with y from the y squared minus, you take the y from 12y, you'll be left with 12. And on this side, we have 16 common in both of them. You don't just take out the 16, you take it with the negative, because you want to get this same value. So you take out minus 16 equals, it's like saying minus 16y over minus 16. Minus divided by minus is positive. 16 cancels 16, you'll be left with y. So you have it as plus y or y you have to really be careful here. This 192 owns this positive, so you have positive 192 divided by minus 16. Positive divided by negative is negative, and 192 divided by 16 is 12 equals 0. Once you have y minus 12 here and y minus 12 here, once the value here is the same as the value here, then you're on the right path. So you take one of them, y minus 12, in one bracket. Then in the second bracket, you have y, you take this y that is outside, and this minus 16, you join them together. Minus 16 in brackets equals 0. We say y minus 12 equals 0, or y minus 16 equals 0. You equate this to 0 and also this to 0. That's factorizing. That's looking for the unknown in a quadratic equation. Y equals, minus 12 crosses the equals sign and becomes plus 12. Or on the other side, y, then the minus 16 crosses the equals sign and turns to plus 16. That's 16. Standard in math, you say add 16 to both sides to get this minus 16 to become plus 16 on the other side. Same applies to this 12. The values for our y, 12 and 16. Now we have the values for our y. We can find the values for our x. We can either use equation 1, equation 2, or equation 3. I prefer using equation 3. Equation 3 says x equals 28 minus y. For the first value of our y, where y is 12, what's x? X equals 28 minus the value for our y is 12 minus 12. X is 28 minus 12 is 16. So x is 16 when y is 12. For the second value for y, when y is 16, what's x? We still use equation 3, where you have x equals 28 minus y. So you have x equals 28. The value for our y here is 16 minus 16. X is 28 minus 16. X is 12. So x is 12 when y equals 16. And remember, we assumed that the square root of the question is square root of x minus square root of y. So for the first value for x and y, we can say square root of your x here is 16 minus the value for y is 12 minus square root of 12. 16 is a perfect square, so square root of 16 is 4 minus square root of 12. We can break this 12 down into its basic form. We have 4 minus root. 12 has a perfect square greater than 1. That's 4, and 12 can be 4 times 3. We have it as 4 minus square root of 4 times square root of 3. Since they are linked by times, you give the 4 a separate square root and the 3 a separate square root. You have 4 minus square root of 4 is 2 times root 3. Square root of this 4 is 2, then you still have this times root 3. We go down further. 4 minus 2 root 3. Since they are linked by times, you join them together. So one of our answers is 4 minus 2 root 3. For the second one, on the other side, using our assumed square root, where we have our x to be 12 and our y to be 16, we have it as square root of x here is 12, square root of 12 minus square root of 16, because our y here is 16. This is SURDS in its single form, and it can be converted to its basic form. And from the one we just solved, root 12 is same thing as 2 root 3 minus, and square root of 16 or root 16 is 4. Our second answer is 2 root 3 minus 4. So our two answers are 4 minus 2 root 3 or 2 root 3 minus 4. They are not the same thing. 4 minus 2 root 3 will not give you the same answer as 2 root 3 minus 4. So we have two answers. And when we square both of them, you get the initial SURDS question, which is 28 minus 16 root 3. So the square root of 28 minus 16 root 3 is either 4 minus 2 root 3 or 2 root 3 minus 4. A quick summary. The question says find the square root of 28 minus 16 root 3. First, we assume that the square root of 28 minus 16 root 3 is square root of x minus square root of y. Watch, we changed it to negative here because we have a negative here. Next, we equated the SURDS to its square root, squaring the assumed square root. We expanded the square root, got this value, and at this point, we equated the constants to form equation 1 and the SURDS to form equation 2. We brought down equation 2 to its lowest term, which is 192 equals x times y or xy. Then we have a simultaneous equation, and using substitution method, we created equation 3 from equation 1. Then we substituted equation 3 into equation 2, got a quadratic equation. We solved the quadratic equation to get two values for y, and with these two values, we got two values for x. We went back to our assumed square root. Then inserted the value for x and for y into it. For the second one, we did the same thing. We inserted our value for x and y, and in this case our x is 12 and our y is 16. And with that, we got our second answer. We therefore have two answers, which are 4 minus 2 root 3 and 2 root 3 minus 4. I hope you understand this. It's just for you to sit, memorize the steps, or try to learn all the steps that you have to take to solve the question, apply it, and get the question solved. You can try this same question and see if you get the answer. And if you don't get the answer, compare your results to how it's solved on the video and see where you got it mixed up or where you took the wrong turn.